If you live out of your suitcase long enough, you can't really go back home, at least not without some major challenges. Because in short, who you were and what home was has moved on. When I first left Los Angeles, I packed a suitcase and didn't really give anything much thought. I just wanted to travel, see the world, and experience the life I've always dreamed of. But I really didn't think that decision would impact my life down the line. It wasn't until a few years later when I went back home for a wedding that I really see how much my life had changed.
3, 2, 1.
For years, my Instagram looked perfect. Fake, like plastic jewelry, but perfect. Working off the beaches of Costa Rica, chilling in a jungle loft in Thailand, and taking iconic trains through the mountains of Sri Lanka. It was the dream, and on the outside, it looked great. But what you didn't see in those photos are the trade-offs. The things I never learned, and the things that would become so much harder to catch up on. I don't regret the choices I made. I don't regret the places or the lessons I learned. But each push has a pull, and every decision has a sacrifice. So while my friends were posting promotions, buying their first homes, and quietly building the future, I had none of that. I was too focused on the present to plan for the future. And half a decade later, I really understood that the longer you build up one life, the harder it is to build another. Because everything that was familiar back in the day becomes more and more unfamiliar. The first 2 years of living out my suitcase, I was on a high, and I ignored my life back home. But by the third year of traveling, I finally went back home for a wedding. And on the surface, it was fantastic. We were all still the same. Old friends with old history and rock solid ties. But after a beautiful reception, as the chairs were being put away and the photo booth was being disassembled, we finally got around to actually talking, like real talks. And as we were sitting around out in the balcony, I really saw how stuck in history I was. Every one of them had their own incredible lives that they've changed, grown, and evolved within the past couple of years. Some had married, some had kids and settled down. Some had moved, some had grown their careers and directed others. Even the ones that seemed to have stayed the same still changed so much, but they all changed together. I didn't. Because there's something to be said about proximity. You can hear about the lives through social media, or you can have weekly check-ins, but you are not there with them. When you're gone long enough, you don't come back to the same group. You come back as a visitor to their new life, because who you were and who they were have veered into separate directions. So earlier this year, I made a stop back home, and I was shocked. But protests and politics aside, I was way more shocked at the mundane moments. I spent 2 months in LA, and I revisited all my favorite bars, clubs, restaurants, all that. At least the ones that were still open. But what I remembered about the city and my life here had completely changed. Everything felt unfamiliar, not just because the world does change in 5 years, and COVID didn't help, but because everything that felt normal became abnormal. Yes, tipping became a stronger point of contention. LA traffic felt more like a beautiful mess than it already was, and those $15 tacos had become blasphemous. But it went deeper than that. It was the feeling that the world isn't your home anymore. It looked the same, smelled the same, but your relationship to it is gone. The world kept moving while I was gone, and the hardest part, so had I. So it brings me back to today. My life is living in Japan with my son and my partner, and I'm constantly reminded that I am an outsider. I don't belong. I can't speak the language, I can't read the menus, and most importantly, I am not grounded, at least not in the same way I was 6 years back home. But the strange thing is, I feel more at home here, living out my suitcase with 7 t-shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, using Google Translate to buy diapers for my son, fumbling through Pasmos and Sukas while I take the wrong train home. And maybe that's the point, because this train seat, this awkwardness, these 7 shirts is my home now. And I'm more home here than I would be back in Los Angeles, because that home doesn't exist anymore. It is buried in a time capsule, a relic that only survives in memory. And here's the thing, it's not just me. If you leave home long enough, your home changes without you too. Friends move on, cities shift, and most importantly, you change and you walk down a road that you can't walk back from. At the end of the day, this is my life, and I will never trade it for anyone else's. And if you ever want to live abroad, travel the world, or live out of a suitcase, I say do it. But for better or for worse, it will change your life.